Once upon a time. The mysterious stranger. In a remote corner of the Ashanti kingdom, there lay a village called Nyamkai. Known for its vibrant festivals and lush green landscapes, Nyamkai was a place where tradition was cherished, and the wisdom of the elders guided every decision. The villagers lived in harmony, their lives woven together by shared customs and age-old beliefs. Among them was a young woman named Abina. Abina was unlike most women in Nyamkai. Fiercely independent and strong-willed, she often questioned traditions and chose to follow her own path. Her spirit was wild and free, much like the wind that rustled through the village trees. Her laughter was infectious, and her beauty undeniable, deep brown eyes, smooth ebony skin, and a smile that could warm even the coldest of hearts. One market day, as Abina strolled through the bustling square, something caught her eye. A stranger, tall and handsome, stood by the fabric stalls. His clothes were finer than any she had seen, and his presence commanded attention. He turned, and their eyes met. Abina felt a strange flutter in her chest. Curious, she asked her friend, Oma, about him. "That's Kofi," Oma whispered. "He came from the northern lands. They say he's wealthy, but no one knows much about him." Intrigued, Abina found herself drawn to Kofi. He was charming and soft-spoken, with eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. Their paths crossed often, and soon, they began meeting under the shade of the great baobab tree, sharing stories and laughter. Abina's parents were concerned. Her father, Kwaku, warned her, "Be careful, Abina. A man without roots is like a river without a source." Her mother, Efua, added, "We know nothing of his past. Sometimes, wealth hides dark secrets." But Abina's heart was set. Kofi made her feel alive, his stories of distant lands and adventures filling her dreams with excitement. She ignored her parents' cautions, believing love could conquer any mystery. As the moon waxed and waned, their bond deepened. One evening, under a starry sky, Kofi knelt before Abina and took her hand. "Marry me," he whispered. "Let me make you the queen of my heart." Overwhelmed with joy, Abina agreed. Preparations began swiftly, and soon, the village buzzed with excitement. The wedding day was a grand affair. Villagers feasted, and drums echoed across the hills. Yet, despite the celebration, there was an odd emptiness. No family from Kofi's side attended, only a few distant friends who seemed out of place. That night, as Abina and Kofi retired to their new home at the edge of the village, a cold wind swept through the air. They shared sweet whispers and gentle touches, love blossoming between them. Just as Kofi leaned in to share a secret, the door crashed open. Two towering figures, cloaked in shadows, burst into the room. Their faces were hidden, their strength unnatural. Before Abina could react, they seized Kofi. He struggled, his voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Abina. I never meant to." Before he could finish, the figures dragged him into the night. Abina screamed, chasing after them, but darkness swallowed them whole. Alone and terrified, she fell to her knees, the night air chilling her to the bone. With her heart shattered and her mind racing, Abina knew this was only the beginning of a journey she could never have imagined, the old woman's prophecy. The village of Nyamkai had never felt so silent. The morning after Kofi's disappearance, whispers filled the air like restless spirits. Some villagers claimed he had run away, others swore they saw shadows moving in the night. But Abina refused to believe that Kofi had abandoned her. Something was terribly wrong, and she needed answers. Ignoring the fearful warnings of the elders, Abina set out to search for her missing husband. She retraced his steps, speaking to those who had seen him last. But no one had any answers. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Then, on the third night, she had a dream. A voice, old and whispery, called her name. "Abina, come to me, Follow the path of the fireflies. She woke with a start, her heart pounding. As she stepped outside, she saw something unusual, tiny golden lights flickering in the darkness, moving toward the forest. Fireflies. Abina followed them, her bare feet silent against the damp earth. The deeper she went, the colder the air became. The trees loomed like silent watchers, their branches twisting unnaturally. She was about to turn back when she saw it, a small hut, half hidden between two ancient trees. Smoke curled from its thatched roof, and an eerie blue glow surrounded it. A hunched figure sat at the entrance, stirring a clay pot over a small fire. The woman's skin was wrinkled like old bark, her eyes milky white. Without looking up, she spoke. "You seek him, don't you?" Abina shivered. "How do you know?" The old woman let out a hollow laugh. "I have been waiting for you." She gestured for Abina to sit. "Your husband, Kofi, is not of this world." Abina's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" The old woman's voice lowered. "He is a spirit, caught between life and death. Many years ago, he was murdered by men who stole his wealth and buried his body where no one would find it. But his soul, it never left. It wandered, searching for peace. That is how he found you." Abina shook her head. "No, that's not possible. I touched him, I spoke to him, He was given a second chance," the woman interrupted. "But the spirits who rule the world of the dead have taken him back. And if you do nothing, he will be lost forever." A heavy silence filled the air. Abina's hands trembled as she whispered, "What must I do?" The old woman reached inside her hut and pulled out a small gourd filled with a dark, shimmering liquid. "Drink this before the first light of dawn, and you will cross into the spirit world. There, you must find him before sunrise. If you fail, you will never return." Abina hesitated, staring at the potion. Was she truly willing to risk everything for Kofi? But then she thought of his smile, his touch, the way he had looked at her on their wedding night. She took the gourd. "I will go," she said, her voice steady. The old woman nodded, her eyes filled with something unreadable. "Then may the ancestors guide you, child. And may love be stronger than death." As the first hint of dawn touched the sky, Abina lifted the gourd to her lips and drank. Darkness swallowed her whole. The spirit world journey. A strange weightlessness filled Abina's body as the darkness wrapped around her. She had no sense of time, no sense of space, only the sensation of falling, like a feather drifting through the void. Then, suddenly, she landed. The air was thick, heavy with whispers. Around her stretched a landscape of grey mist, shifting and swirling like living smoke. Shapes moved within it, figures with hollow eyes, their voices murmuring in sorrow. Lost souls. Abina's heart pounded as she stepped forward. The spirits reached out, their cold fingers brushing against her skin. Some wept, others pleaded. "Help me, take me home, please." She shut her eyes and pressed on. These were not her battles to fight. Ahead, the mist parted, revealing a river unlike any she had ever seen. The waters ran deep and crimson, thick like blood. A single wooden boat waited at the shore, and beside it stood a faceless figure draped in tattered robes. Abina stepped forward. "I need to cross." The figure extended a bony hand. A price must be paid. She had nothing. No gold, no food, only the ring on her finger. The symbol of her love, the last piece of coffee she had left. Her heart ached, but she slid the ring off and placed it in the figure's hand. It clenched its fist, and the ring vanished. The boat rocked as if accepting her sacrifice. She stepped inside, and the figure pushed the boat forward. As she drifted across the river of blood, she felt a strange weight in her chest, like something pulling her backward. But she kept her eyes ahead. She had come too far to turn back. The forest of echoes. Beyond the river lay a dense forest, where the trees stood unnaturally tall and twisted. The moment Abina stepped into it, the air changed. Abina. She froze. The voice was soft, familiar. Abina, my child. Her mother's voice. She turned, eyes wide, but saw nothing. Then another voice, deep and warm. Abina, come back to me. Kofi. Her breath caught. He sounded close. Desperate. She ran forward, pushing past branches, her heart racing. Here, Abina. Don't leave me. The voices surrounded her, calling, pleading. The more she ran, the darker the forest became. The trees twisted, their branches forming clawed hands. Then, a whisper close to her ear. If you keep going, you will die. Her steps faltered. You can still turn back. She squeezed her eyes shut. These were illusions. Tricks meant to make her lose her way. Taking a deep breath, she stilled herself. I will not listen to you, she whispered. The voices screeched in anger. The trees trembled. But when she opened her eyes, the path was clear. She ran forward, leaving the echoes behind. The mysterious estate. At the edge of the forest stood something unexpected. A grand estate, its windows glowing with warm light. Laughter and music spilled into the air. A deep longing filled Abina's chest as she stepped closer. Inside, she saw a wedding. Her wedding. She stood at the altar, Kofi's hands in hers. She saw their future, children running through the fields, their laughter filling the house. A life of joy and love. Tears filled her eyes. Was this real? Had she been wrong all along? A gentle hand touched her shoulder. She turned, and saw an older version of herself, hair streaked with silver, eyes filled with contentment. Stay, the woman said softly. This is the life you were meant to have. Abina's heart ached. This was everything she had ever wanted. But then, why did the air feel so wrong? A shadow flickered in the corner of her vision. She turned, and saw something horrifying. The guests had no faces. The illusion shattered. The estate dissolved into darkness, revealing a barren wasteland beneath her feet. She clenched her fist. I will not be fooled. A gust of wind howled through the emptiness, almost like a sigh of defeat. Ahead, a cave loomed. Its entrance was pure black. A hole in reality itself. Abina took a deep breath. Kofi was in there. She knew it. Summoning every ounce of courage, she stepped forward, into the dark. The witch's challenge. The cave swallowed Abina in darkness. The moment she stepped inside, the air turned cold, thick with the scent of damp earth and something old. Then, she heard it. A voice. Kofi. Abina, help me. Her breath caught. It was faint, distant, like an echo trapped in the walls. She hurried forward, her hands brushing against rough stone as she navigated the twisting path. With each step, the whispers grew louder. Not just Kofi's voice, but others. Angry, sorrowful, mocking. And then, a flickering light appeared in the distance. She followed it, stepping into a vast underground chamber. At its center stood a figure cloaked in red and black robes, her long silver hair flowing like mist. Her eyes burned like dying embers, filled with amusement and something darker. Behind her, suspended in the air, was Kofi. His body was pale, almost translucent. He struggled against unseen chains, his eyes filled with pain. Abina, he gasped. The witch turned to face her, lips curling into a wicked smile. So, she said, her voice smooth as silk. You came for him. Abina clenched her fist. Raise him. The witch chuckled. You are bold. But tell me, foolish girl, do you really think you can claim him from death itself? Abina stood her ground. I love him. The witch's smile widened. Love. She let the word roll off her tongue as if it amused her. Love is powerless here. Love does not break chains. Love does not defeat death. Abina swallowed. Love is why I have come this far. The witch's eyes narrowed. Then prove it. With a wave of her hand, the cave shifted. The walls seemed to stretch, the air thickening like smoke. Shadows rose from the ground, forming twisted figures with hollow eyes. They lunged. Abina did not run. She faced them. The first shadow lashed at her, but she stood firm. Its claws passed through her like wind. The second screamed in her face, but she did not flinch. One by one, they attacked, until only silence remained. Abina exhaled. The witch tilted her head, intrigued. Not bad. But tell me, would you still love him if he was not what you thought? She waved her hand again. The image of Kofi changed. His warm brown skin became ashen gray. His features sharpened, his body looking more spirit than man. Abina's breath caught. This was the truth. Kofi had been gone for a long time. She had fallen in love with the spirit. The witch's voice was soft now, almost kind. You can walk away. Forget him. Live a life free from the dead. Abina's eyes filled with tears. But she stepped forward. I love Kofi, she whispered. No matter what he is. For the first time, the witch's expression changed. She sighed. Then, with a flick of her wrist, the chains vanished. Kofi fell. Abina caught him. His body was weak, but his eyes were still his. The witch watched them in silence. Then, she smiled, not wickedly, but almost approvingly. You have courage, she said. Very well. With a wave of her hand, the air shimmered, and Kofi's form became solid once more. Abina gasped. He felt real. Warm. Alive. Kofi touched her cheek, his eyes filled with wonder. Abina, you saved me. But before they could embrace, the witch's voice echoed one last time. You are not done yet. They turned to her. To truly be free, the witch said, you must seek Kofi's brother. He holds the truth of what happened that night. Only then will your story be complete. Abina frowned. Kofi's brother. She looked at Kofi. His expression darkened, as if memories long buried had begun to surface. The witch gave one final smile. Go. And do not return. With a wave of her hand, the cave vanished. Abina and Kofi stood once more in the forest, the morning light breaking through the trees. But in Kofi's eyes, Abina saw something new. A shadow of fear. Avenge the betrayal. Abina awoke with a jolt. The forest around her was no longer dark and eerie. The morning sun filtered through the trees, bathing everything in golden light. She was back. Beside her, Kofi stirred, his fingers tightening around hers. His body felt real, warm, alive. Had it all been a dream? No. The weight in her heart told her otherwise. The witch's final words still echoed in her mind. You must seek Kofi's brother. Only then will your story be complete. Then she saw it. A small wooden compass lay on the ground beside her. It hadn't been there before. Its needle spun wildly before settling in one direction. Kofi sat up, his face unreadable. It's pointing home. Abina took a deep breath. Then we follow it. The journey took 2 days. As they approached Kofi's home village, an uneasy feeling settled in Abina's chest. The place was peaceful, too peaceful. Villagers moved about their daily tasks, their faces full of life and laughter. How could they not know? How could they live on while Kofi had been lost in the spirit world? They reached the village square, where an elderly man, the village chief, sat under a large baobab tree. He squinted at them, then his eyes widened in recognition. Kofi. His voice trembled. It cannot be. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Abina felt Kofi stiffen beside her. Where is Kwame? He asked. A tall, broad-shouldered man pushed through the crowd. His face was a mirror of Kofi's but hardened with age and something darker. Brother. Kwame's voice was a mix of shock and something else, fear. Kofi's jaw clenched. I know the truth. Kwame's eyes flickered to Abina, as if realizing she was the source of this revelation. But he quickly masked his expression with grief. Brother, I thought you were dead. We searched for you. We mourned you. Lies. Abina stepped forward. You mourned him, Kwame. Or did you murder him? Gasps filled the air. Kwame's face darkened. What nonsense is this? Abina held his gaze. The spirits have spoken. I know what you did. The village chief stood. Explain yourself, girl. Abina turned to the villagers, her voice steady. Kofi did not vanish. He was betrayed. She pointed at Kwame. By his own blood. The crowd murmured. Some shook their heads. Others frowned at Kwame. Kwame let out a laugh, though it was strained. This is madness. Kofi was attacked in the forest. No one knows what happened after that. Abina wasn't shaken. But you do, don't you? Kwame's smile faltered. Before he could speak, the wind changed. The once clear sky darkened. The air grew heavy. Then, a voice. Low, echoing, and unmistakable. Kwame. The villagers froze. The ground trembled. The wind howled through the trees. And then, out of nowhere, Kofi's blood-stained tunic fell from the sky, landing at Kwame's feet. A woman shrieked. Kwame staggered backward, his face pale. This is witchcraft. The chief's eyes narrowed. Or is it the ancestors delivering justice? The villagers began to whisper. They had seen signs like this before. They knew what it meant. Kwame's breathing grew ragged. I didn't mean to, he stopped himself, but it was too late. The villagers turned to him, their eyes filled with suspicion. The ground rumbled again. This time, a bloody handprint appeared on the tunic. It was the final sign. Kwame dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. I was jealous. Kofi was always loved more, always praised more. Even when we both wanted Abina, she only had eyes for him. His voice twisted with rage. So I followed him into the forest that night. I struck him down. His breathing was heavy. But I never thought he would linger. Silence. Then, the chief spoke. His voice was heavy with grief. You have betrayed your family. Your people. And the ancestors do not forgive such sins. Kwame's fate was sealed. That evening, the village held a tribunal. Justice was swift. Kwame was banished, condemned to wander the lands as an outcast, never to call any place home again. And as he left, the wind whispered once more. Justice is done. Abina turned to Kofi. His expression was peaceful for the first time since she had met him. The shadow that had clung to him for so long was gone. The weight had lifted. The spirits had been avenged. And Kofi was finally free, the final revelation. The days after Kwame's banishment were filled with both relief and sorrow. The village elders held a ceremony to honor Kofi, welcoming him back as a lost son. But though his spirit was now at peace, Kofi knew his place was no longer in the world of the living. One evening, as Abina stood by the riverbank, Kofi approached her. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and red, casting a golden glow over the water. He smiled softly. "It's time, Abina." She knew what he meant. "You're leaving?" He took her hands. "I was given a second chance to make things right, but I cannot stay. My journey has ended." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I love you. And I will love you always." His gaze was full of warmth. "But you are meant to live, Abina. To carry our love forward." He placed a gentle hand over her stomach. "Our child will know my love through you." Abina gasped. "Our child." A sudden rush of warmth spread through her, as if the universe itself had whispered the truth into her soul. She was pregnant. Before she could speak, Kofi leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. His presence felt stronger than ever, yet she could already feel him slipping away. "Tell our child who I was. Teach them love. Teach them truth." And with those final words, Kofi's form began to fade, like mist in the morning sun. Abina reached for him, but he was already gone. She stood there for a long time, hands over her stomach, the weight of his love still lingering in the air. A child of fate. The news spread quickly through the village. Abina's child was declared a gift from the ancestors, a living symbol of love that had defied even death. The elders gathered around her one evening, their wise faces filled with wonder. "This child carries a powerful destiny," the chief said. "They will be raised with the wisdom of the past and the strength of true love." Abina bowed her head. "I will protect them. I will teach them Kofi's truth." The women of the village helped her prepare, weaving cloth for the baby and singing lullabies under the moonlight. And then, on a night when the stars shone brighter than ever, the old woman returned. She emerged from the shadows, her eyes glimmering with ancient knowledge. "You have learned well, child," she said. Abina smiled. "I understand now. True love never dies." The old woman nodded. "It lives in stories, in memories, in the children who carry our spirit forward." She placed a wrinkled hand on Abina's belly. "This child is not only yours and Kofi's. They are a bridge between the living and the dead. A reminder that love, truth, and justice always find their way." Abina wiped away a tear. "Thank you, wise one." The old woman chuckled. "No, child. Thank you." And with that, she vanished into the night, as if she had never been there at all. The legacy of love. Years passed, and Abina's child grew strong and kind, just like their father. She told them stories of Kofi, of his bravery, of his love. She taught them to always seek truth, no matter how painful it might be. And as the child grew, so did the legend. People whispered of the woman who faced death itself for love. Of the man who returned from the spirit world to right a terrible wrong. Their story was told by grandmothers by the fire, sung in lullabies, and carried in the hearts of lovers for generations to come. Because true love never dies. And neither do the stories that keep it alive. The end.